Hello everybody and welcome back to Nerdy Miniatures, and in today's video we begin painting our Sylvaneth Spearhead. Starting right at the beginning today, we are painting our Branchwych, which was the first figure I ever built on this channel. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First, let's talk about the design I am going for. As soon as I knew I was going for the Sylvaneth Spearhead, I knew I wanted to do a cherry blossom style for these figures. I looked at some reference pictures for some inspiration and ended up on the blog of Goldman's Welt, who has an entire piece dedicated to their Sylvaneth of the Cherry Blossom Grove, and I thought they looked amazing. If you want to check out their blog, I will leave a reference to it in the description down below. They have done some amazing stuff, and if mine can look even half as good as theirs, then I consider that a win overall. So let's get into how I painted my Branchwych. To start, I began by spraying the figure with grey Seer spray paint. I did one coat and left for 15 minutes before bringing it inside. I then went over the entire figure, excluding her scythe, using the shade Dryad Bark, sweeping it over the entire figure with a small brush to make sure I got into all of the bends and gaps that this figure has. Once that dried, I went in with the aptly named Sylvaneth Bark and dry brushed it over the figure, letting the paint hit all of the high points to create the perfect amount of depth and highlight. This began a system of layering different dry brushing layers on top of one another to create the perfect figure. Following this, I went in with the paint Rakarth Flesh. Using the same technique, I brushed it over the antlers on her head. Now, as this is supposed to be a humanoid tree, it was time to add some green, so mixing the colours Elysian Green and Vallejo modder colour in white, I dry brushed a small amount over the most central part of the highlighted areas, focusing mostly on her chest and chin. Whilst that dried, I moved on to her scythe. For this, I covered the entire blade with a coat of Rakarth Flesh, before moving on to the blade. For this, I used the colour Sotek Green and a small brush, to make sure I got into all the different angles that this weapon has. Now it was time to start adding purple and pink hues to the body of the figure. This is where I played around with some colours a bit and tried different things to try and get an end result that I was happy with. Using the shade Magos Purple, I painted the worm on her shoulder as well as the bark down her front of her body that resembled a loincloth. Moving on to her eyes, to create the impression that magic was what was bringing this creature to life, I used the shade Moot Green to fill these in, which is a very vibrant green colour. Whilst that dried, I moved back onto her scythe. Using Elysian Green once again, I painted the leaves and vines that are holding the blade of the weapon in place. Now this figure was looking a little bit too clean, so to create shadows and depth, I used the shade Nuln Oil and a medium-sized brush to sweep the paint over the front and back of the figure. The scythe blade was looking a little bit too flat, so I decided to dry brush the blade using the colour Lothern Blue and my big dry brush to add more of a glowing effect on this weapon. Now that the purple I had added earlier was dry, I decided I wanted to make this character more vibrant. So to do this, I went in with the colour Emperor's Children, which is a vibrant pink shade, and went over the areas that I previously applied the purple. I wanted to have some fun with the little bug on the witch's shoulder, so I decided to stick with the vibrant theme, as I added Elysian Green to his pincers and Sotek Green to his head and his horns that flow down his body. On her body are a bunch of swirls and even a few cracks. This tells me that this girl has seen some battle before. So I decided to add more of that Moot Green into those gaps to show the glowing light radiating from within coming through those holes. Now it was time to start amplifying that cherry blossom look with this figure, so going back into Emperor's Children, I painted the leaves on her weapon to start introducing more of that pink colour scheme before moving on to the braid that is going down her back. Using the colour Fulgrim Pink, I began to shade in sections of the braid, and using our tried and true Elysian Green, I began to add that to the braid also. Focusing on the antlers coming out of the figure's head, I went back in with the colour Fulgrim Pink and a dry brush, sweeping it across the antlers to create a nice base for the foliage I would add later. Off screen, I painted some small skulls and a plant that I added to the base. In the end, I ended up going without the plant and just the skulls, and instead I added foliage and flowers that I preferred. But before I could place these down, I had to paint the base. So to do this, I went in with Stirland Mud. Now that was laid down and dried, it was time to move on to the fun stuff. To stick these items to the base and to add foliage to the figure, I used a selection of different foliage and UV resin to set them in place. For this, I used the Let's Resin UV Resin Bonding Kit. This came with a small bottle of resin and a UV pen to cure it. It takes about 10 to 15 seconds to cure using the UV pen, and takes about 24 hours for the resin to set in natural light. But that is it, and that is our Branchwych complete, and ready for when we start battling my Sylvaneth army against Mr. Nerd's Seraphon army in just a few weeks' time. In the description down below you will find 2 links, the first to Mr. Nerd's channel, so if you enjoy MMOs and action RPGs then check that out. If you enjoy fantasy lore then please feel free to take a look at my channel where I cover all things from Tolkien, Game of Thrones, Warhammer and The Witcher, so if that is more your cup of tea then feel free to have a look at that also. Anyway, that'll be it from me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world, and as always, peace out.